You are welcomed by the History Channel and Storytelling, and we begin. Victor occupied a double compartment, traveling in a luxury carriage. The compartment consisted of 2 rooms, a living room, bedroom, and a sanitary room. He rode alone, and it was very comfortable. No one was in his way. He could afford such a journey. Today he was on his way to the city he had left 3 years ago, after the scandal. And now, sitting at the window, he remembered how it had all happened. He had first met Nastia at a wedding, where he had been a guest of the groom. Then a beautiful blue-eyed girl with blonde hair caught his attention. She was a bridesmaid. He noticed that she was being courted by a tall young man dressed in the latest fashion. As it seemed to everyone, Nastia was a couple with him. But being attentive and observant by nature, Victor noticed that they were not a couple. And so he invited Nastia to a few dances, during which he flirted with her. Smiles and harmless flirting were replaced by conversations, and hoping for nothing, Victor asked her out on a date. Nastia unexpectedly agreed. All this did not go unnoticed by the young man, who had his own views on Nastia and attended the wedding with his friends. During one musical interlude, Victor retreated to the men's room. There, a young man and his friends approached him and announced in a swaggering manner, "If you don't want to get hurt, get out of here and leave Nastia alone." The fight lasted a few seconds. Victor washed his hands and returned to the hall, where the music was playing again. He was dancing with Nastia again. Her friend at the table never showed up. Then Toastmaster organized a number of contests, in which Victor and Nastia participated. Victor, by this time, was an eligible bridegroom. He opened his own business, which brought him excellent profits and was constantly expanding his business. He had several cafes, a beautiful hotel with a restaurant in the city center. Now he was actively developing cargo and passenger transportation. The office of his main enterprise was in the center of the city, not far from the hotel. There was also a manager. Victor himself was in the shadows, although he had full control over the work of the enterprise he had created. After meeting at the wedding, Nastia and Victor started dating. He asked about her companion at the wedding, to which Nastia, with a laugh, said, "He showed up before a friend's wedding. Some fiancé I know. Used to live in our neighborhood. Now he's moved to the regional center. He came to visit his grandmother, and she lives near the cottage of the bride's parents. But after the wedding, he disappeared. Probably went back to his place." Anastasia finished her studies and unexpectedly informed Victor that she got a job in a construction firm, and the office was in the center. Her friend Natashka, at whose wedding they had met, was also employed there. All this was unexpected, because Victor wanted to hire her as an engineer in his office. But he knew the employees of the construction firm and was friends with their founder. They discussed Nastia's work with him, and he increased her salary, saying that he could not raise it any higher. A year passed and he proposed to Nastia. They got married. Nastia came to live with him. Victor did not tell her that he was the owner of a large business, although he hinted to her about the possibility of her moving to a neighboring office. One day, the founder of the firm where Nastia worked warned Victor that he had hired a certain Andrei as head of the department. They made inquiries about him and found out that he was constantly changing jobs because of his inordinate attraction to women. He skillfully drove wedges with them. As a rule, the scams were uncovered, and he had to run away from jealous husbands, from this, and the constant change of jobs. But as a specialist, he was competent. Victor talked to Nastia and warned her to stay away from Andrei. But still, Victor learned that Andrei, appreciating the new team, made an attempt to court Nastia. That day, Andrei, with beatings on his face, was found in the underground parking lot of the firm. He had been warned not to hit on married women in the office. That if he was seen near Nastia again, he'd better leave town. Andrei seemed to heed the warnings, and stopped dragging around the women in the office. Nevertheless, Victor warned Nastia once again to stay away from Andrei. To which she said, "I could complain to my brother about him, and there's a very serious fight there. I don't want your brother to go to jail. Pashka's already on the edge, running the businessmen. Vitya, he's got his own team that will do whatever he wants for him on his orders. And he's got the whole city under him. I don't know why you don't want to be friends with him. Nastya, I prefer legal, legitimate business. But you don't tell me what you do in your office. I'm an economist, and I work. And as a result, you and I have everything. A nice cottage, a car. We don't deny ourselves anything, we go on vacation wherever you wish." One day before New Year's Eve, Victor went on a business trip. Not far away, 2 or 3 hours drive from the city. An important contract was being concluded, and serious negotiations were expected. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he called Anastasia and asked, "How are you doing?" "I'm fine. 1 more hour of work, then we go home." "What time are you getting here?" "Tentatively, around 10 o'clock in the evening. Since the negotiations have not yet begun and there will be a lot of issues to discuss." "All right, I'll be home at 6:30. Do you have tomorrow off?" "Yeah, it's a day off." "That's great. Let's go ice skating." "Okay, I love you, and I'm sorry, my battery's dying, I gotta change my phone. We'll get you an iPhone at the mall." Modern. It didn't go as Victor had expected. The lawyer of the contracting party appeared and put the already signed documents on the table. Practically Victor was free and could go home. There were no questions. He got into the car, gave the documents to his lawyer Konstantin, and they drove back. On the way Victor instructed Kostya on what he wanted to do. In fact, he had taken ownership of a number of neighborhood service stations. At around 7 p.m., he dropped Kostya off near his house and drove to his apartment. It was dark in the cottage, although, as Nastya claimed, she should have been home. He opened the door and went inside. Since his phone was completely dead, he picked up his home phone and dialed Nastya's number. But suddenly, her friend Natasha answered. "Hello, I'm listening." "Who is this? Who am I speaking to?" "I'm Victor, Anastasia's husband." "Where is she?" "Oh, she's dancing with Andrei right now." She left her phone on the table. "And where are you?" "We're at the restaurant at the Central Hotel." "I see." The hotel and restaurant belonged to him and were not far away. After 20 minutes, he entered the room without undressing and witnessed his wife dancing a gypsy dance with Andrei to applause. During the dance, they went in a circle and came close to him. Anastasia saw her husband and wanted to say something. At that time Andrei, dancing, suddenly stood in front of her and winked at Victor. And this he did for nothing. Victor's fist clearly hit Andrei's head. The blow knocked him out and he collapsed to the floor. The music stopped. The men standing nearby intervened and pulled Victor away from Andrei. A minute later, Victor was detained by the police. And in another 10 minutes he was taken to the police station. What happened in the restaurant next, Victor did not know and was not interested in it. He spent the night in a temporary detention center. In the morning he was taken to court, and the judge on duty gave him 15 days for hooliganism. He said, "You're lucky, young man, the victim didn't file a report. But you still haven't explained why you hit him." "Citizen judge, it says in the file, hooliganism." "Well, I think 15 days is enough time for you to think about your behavior. Convoy, let's get the next one." Having returned to the detention center, Victor asked the chief to give him a chance to talk to his lawyer. Kostya arrived an hour later. He brought him a blanket and some food parcels. They were given a chance to talk. Victor agreed with Kostya that he would meet him in 10 days. He asked him, "Kostya, buy me a new phone. My battery is dead. And I have the right to phone calls, according to the daily schedule, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., and from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And move my car from the restaurant parking lot to the cottage. What are you going to do next? Kostya, I have plenty of time to think. They don't even let us shovel snow here. You could use it. You know, I warned that bastard how it would end if I saw him near my wife, and he winked at me. So I shut his eye. Well, there's another problem. After he was released from the police, he was found by a ROVD patrol, unconscious and pretty badly beaten up. He's in trauma right now. I had nothing to do with it. I was in the monkey house at the time. So I have an alibi. Thanks for the blanket. You're welcome. I'll buy you a cell phone today and give it to you. Call me if you need anything. And so began his time in prison. 15 days was a long time. At that time, he unexpectedly received a package from his wife. Victor refused to accept it and returned it back, together with the attached letter, which he did not read. He explained to the police officer. Tell her I don't want anything. But she's at the warden's office right now, trying to get a meeting with you. And I'm not going to see her. I'm not leaving my cell to see her. The warden came in and said, Look, your wife is very upset. Do you know who her brother is? Yes, I do. Besides, think about it, the whole town's walking under him. I don't. That's because you're related to him. How do you plan to live in same town with him? Citizen chief, I don't plan to live with him. As for the city, you can change it. Can you tell me what time I'll be released from the detention center? Is that important? I want to plan. We'll release you at 10 o'clock. That's fine. That same day, Victor called Kostya and said, Pick me up from the detention center. Prepare a room at our hotel. From my office in the second room, bring me a suit and clean shirts. For the afternoon, get train tickets to the regional center. I think it's time to go to the next level. What's in here? I have a manager here. I'll put you in control of his work, and I'll control it myself, via remote access. What about the regional center? I'll get a foothold, for starters. Yeah, you're gonna upset the neighborhood. What do you mean? After the scandal at the restaurant, there was an article about you in the local paper, so that's what you are, Mr. X. What was it about? Nobody knew you were one of the richest men in the neighborhood. Well, I'm leaving on time. When Victor was released from the temporary detention center, there was a car at the gate, in which Kostya was sitting. He drove him to the hotel. Victor washed up, changed his clothes, had lunch. On the way he learned the news of the city and the district. After lunch, he took a cab to the station to catch the train. The next day, in the morning, he was in the regional center. There he began to create a new business. The idea of which he had thought about in the detention center. His business in the neighborhood was also flourishing and bringing in a good income. 6 months later, he started building a new house for himself. Within 2 years he had established himself in the region, and then a factory in the district center, from which he had left, came into his sight. After preliminary negotiations, which lasted about a year, he managed to bring down the price considerably. And so, leaving the new manager in the region, he went to the district center. During these 3 years, he often remembered his wife, who had stayed behind to live here. He loved her. But he didn't try to contact her. It was easy to do, though, because she still lived in their cottage. In the morning, the train approached the platform. Victor got out of the carriage, got into a cab and arrived at his hotel. There he checked in on the top floor. Half an hour later, the manager came to see him, and they had a long discussion about business problems in the district. Then they discussed the upcoming negotiations with the administration about buying out the plant. At about 12 o'clock, Kostya pulled up, and after discussing all the issues, they went to meet him. Negotiations, despite the preliminary agreements reached, went hard, but in the end, the papers were signed with minor reservations. Around 7 p.m., Victor returned to the hotel. After changing his clothes, he went to the restaurant. He sat down at a table in the corner. A smiling waitress brought him a menu. After polishing it, Victor ordered and waited. He was looking out of the window, and suddenly felt that someone sat down at his table. He turned around and saw his wife's brother Pashka, nicknamed Sailor, who said, "Hello, Mr. X." "Hi, Sailor. Long time no see." "About 3 years." "Not about 3 years, exactly 3 years. It was hard to find you." "I wasn't hiding, I just left." "I know you did. I was alerted to your arrival today. So I thought I'd see you, even though I'm a busy man. I'm aware of your classes. How are you doing? You still in jail?" "Should I? You know better. You see, in my classes, I operate on the principle of Ostap Bender." "And how's that?" "As he once told Shura Balaganov, I'm not a cherub, of course. I have no wings, but I honor the criminal code. It's my weakness. I'll tell you more, I read that very code carefully. And on other principles, remember how Bender got the millionaire Korek? He got all the money. And he didn't rob, he didn't kill. That's right, he blackmailed him. You also set up a horns and hooves office and appointed a chairman to do time. I'm a very serious, full-service firm, all legal. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about Nastia." "What is there to talk about? Tell me, why did you do that to Nastia? What happened 3 years ago? Didn't you ask her? She said it was her own fault and forbade me to look for you. But you were still looking? I figured it was this guy you knocked out was to blame, so I asked the boys to bring him to me to talk to him. But they misunderstood me, and when they brought him in, they overdid it, and he ended up in the hospital." "Is he still there?" "No, he was there for 10 days, then he ran out of the hospital and out of town. I never talked to him." "So, if Nastia won't tell you anything, what makes you think I'm gonna say anything about it?" "I don't know, but I hope so. Nastia's still living alone, not seeing anyone. Natasha and her husband visit her occasionally. But she mostly stays at your house." I asked her what she planned to do next, to which she said I would talk to Victor first. "And then I'll decide." "Don't you think it's time to talk?" "I don't know, I don't have anything to say to her." "Well, she has something to say. You must be staying at this hotel? You want to come visit me? And not alone. With Nastia? And not just with her. I have to think about it." "And while you're thinking that, you're gonna leave again?" "No, my plan is to live in this town. Not the expensive hotel. This is my hotel, and so is this restaurant." "That's great. Vitya, I'm inviting you to my party tomorrow." "You mean your birthday? Wow, you remember. I remember that your birthday is still a week away." I thought so too, but it turned out that I was born yesterday, but in the registry office, in the birth certificate, because of the registrar's mistake, they put the date a week later. And that's a reason for me to celebrate my birthday twice. Come to the restaurant's banquet hall tomorrow. Will Nastia be there too? Yes, I'll invite her. And I think you'll learn a lot. But those are not my secrets. You two can talk at the same time. Or are you weak? I mean, a weak and spineless man who has been broken by an incomprehensible situation, so much so that you have lost your ability to think. And you're afraid to face the problem head-on. Am I the weak one? I'm a self-made businessman. I've been called a lot of things in my life, and if it was an insult, my abusers were held accountable. I'll meet with Nastia and hear her out. It's a deal. I'll see you tomorrow. 6 o'clock in the evening. After dinner, Victor went up to his room. When he was on his way there, he was suddenly stopped by the guards and asked, "Man, who are you and what are you doing here? On this floor?" "Actually, I live here." "What's the problem?" "We don't quite believe it." "Let me see your guest card." "I don't need it. It's enough that I have a room key card." "And you live in the presidential suite?" "Is there a presidential suite here?" "No, that's what we call it among ourselves." "And the room on your key card wouldn't be enough for a month's salary." "How'd you figure that?" "Buy your suit." "Call the head of security." "Shouldn't we call the police?" Victor saw that the guards were ready to use force, so he didn't wait for that. A few minutes later, both guards were lying on the floor. Victor went to his room, and from there he called Kostya, inquiring. "Kostya, sorry to bother you so late, I'd like to get some information about Pashka the sailor. He's an interesting person, as far as I know, he's the brother of your wife, whom you haven't divorced yet. He was running the place before you left, but he didn't bother us much. After the article about you and Mr. X, he's been quiet about our businesses. Although I know the manager was making payments to him." "Who else was he giving money to?" "Well, you saw the whole thing. The money was used to maintain your cottage." "But I didn't live there." "You should discuss this with the manager, though I'd ask him not to be disturbed for the time being, he's ill." "Maybe we should change the manager." "No, we can't find a better one." "All right, let's get on with the sailor. What's next?" "He ducked, and he opened a legitimate office. He's been repeatedly audited by regulatory agencies, but he's clean. He provides all sorts of services." "Why are you so interested in him?" "He invited me to his birthday party tomorrow." "What's it gonna be?" "I don't know, but my wife Nastia will be there." "What can I do to help?" "I understand you need a present for a sailor. Where will you be celebrating?" "In the banquet room of our restaurant." "At least you won't have to go far." "I see. And I'll tell you what, warn our security, because they have questions for me, like who I am and what I'm doing here. But they don't know who you are, and this is a high-end floor." "Exactly. It's a high-end floor, and it's rude to ask questions when I open the door with my key. If the security guards harass guests like that, we'll lose them." "What if I'm walking with a woman? Or invite someone into my room to talk to me? Are they gonna check my ID? And here's what I'm thinking, now security is coming to see me, I've crumpled them a little bit in the hallway. Tell them the guards are fired." "Did they attack you?" "They tried to stop me." That's when there was a knock on the door. Victor said, "It's open." A man came in and introduced himself. "Good evening, I'm the head of security. Please come in. And these young men, please wait in the corridor. You violated the hotel rules and disobeyed the lawful demands of the employees. I've already given the order to fire those two. You want to follow me? But you don't have a guest card." "That's because I'm not a guest. This hotel belongs to me. As head of security, you should know that this room is only for the founder of the company. Or someone else lived here. But where do you see that? Couldn't you have gone to the front desk and asked?" The security chief's cell phone rang, and he answered it. "Yeah, I'm listening." After a very brief conversation, he apologized and left Victor's room. The next day, in the morning, Victor reviewed his closet and came to the conclusion that it was time to update it. For this purpose he went to the shopping center. After a series of purchases, he returned to the hotel. The guards on the floor no longer asked him who he was. In the room Victor laid out the clothes he had bought. At that time Kostya called and invited him to drive over and see the plant he had purchased yesterday. Victor agreed, but said that he had to tidy up his new clothes, as he planned to go to a restaurant in them in the evening. Kostya said, "Vitya, leave everything in the room and go to the parking lot. And the clothing issue will be solved." Got it. Victor left the things as he had been told, and after thinking about it, put the money on top, with a note attached. Payment for putting the clothes in order. He went downstairs and told Kostya about the money. He called someone and said, "There's money left for the girls, I know they won't take it. But you make sure they get it." We arrived at the factory. There was nothing to see. Victor knew this, as he had long had photos of the crumbling plant, once an advanced enterprise that had supplied its products abroad. Asked Bones. "Tell me, how fast can we get production up and running here?" "In 6 months. Although, I will say, individual shops can start working under the conditions of reconstruction." "Is the reconstruction project ready yet?" "We're doing it ourselves, in the region." "I know. What I'm interested in is, at what stage is this project?" "It's already undergoing approval." "And for how long?" Asked the sailor. His firm was contracted to get these approvals through. And they have serious connections. In our city, they'll sign anything they bring in. So serious a firm? No, that much they're feared everywhere. And get this, I understand you've been invited to meet a sailor in honor of his birthday? Yes, why, don't you have to go? I didn't say that. There's no need to quarrel with him. If you invited me, go. Just stay out of the way. And remember, the entire meeting will be under police supervision. Does the sailor know that? He even knows who in his entourage is leaking information about him. Back to the hotel. All his shirts and suits, neat and impeccably smoothed, hung in the closet. Victor went to the shower, where he stood under the jets of hot scalding water for a long time. Having steamed up, he turned on the cold water. Then he scrubbed himself thoroughly with a large terry towel. Got out of the shower. After another 10 minutes, he looked at himself in the large mirror. Before him stood a luxurious man, in an impeccably tailored suit, with a little gray on his temples that adorned him. Recalled lines from the poem, trimmed in the latest fashion, like dandy of London dressed. And finally I saw the light. I remarked to myself, it was a good thing I'd gotten a haircut on the way from the region to here. It was time to go to the restaurant. He took the gift that had been bought on his behalf and went downstairs. To get to the banquet hall, he had to cross the main restaurant hall. Although there was a separate entrance. Victor walked leisurely through the hall, remembering how his wife had danced a gypsy dashingly here with Andrei 3 years ago. He remembered how he had punched that exploding suitor and how he had been left lying on the dance floor. He also recalled how he was arrested for assault and served 15 days in jail. He was raised by his father, who taught him that a family should be based on trust. Only then will harmony and therefore love be achieved in the relationship between husband and wife. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for my father. First, his mother cheated on him by running away from home with some boyfriend of hers. 4 years later, my father met what he thought was a worthy woman and married her. Literally 3 months later, she started walking out on him. When his father found out about it, he just broke down. Nevertheless, Victor loved his father very much. And one day, seeing his father crying because his new wife had brought her lover into the house, Victor grabbed a chain from a chainsaw and hit the man 3 times on the head. He was left lying on the floor, bloody, and spent a month in the hospital. Then he was arrested for the first time in his life, but was soon released. Since Victor was under the age of 14 and not criminally liable. When he returned home, he announced to his stepmother that he was going to her until he turned 14. On the same day, she ran away from home. He never met her again. It was at that time that his grandmother died, and he and his father, having sold the house in the town where they lived, moved here. His father died 3 years later, reduced to a broken shell of a man. Because of what he went through as a child, Victor decided that no woman would treat him the way his mother and stepmother treated his father. Being a naturally gifted boy, he was fond of math, and when the time came, he chose the economics department of the university. There he took up boxing seriously, and boxed quite well. He did not think of forgiving Nastia. The deception was obvious to him. She said she was going home, and she promised not to go near Andre. And what she had done was unacceptable to him. He didn't even want to talk to her about it, but Nastia's brother had called him a weakling for avoiding seeing her. And for him it was quite offensive. He realized that she was his sister, and he would protect her. Pashka talked to his sister and told her. Nastia, Victor's in town. So? Is he coming home? He's staying at his hotel from which, 3 years ago, he was taken by the police. That's his hotel? Yes, it's his hotel. And I think that's why he hasn't divorced you yet. He realizes that in the division of property, he'll lose a lot. No, Pasha, Vitya's not like that, he just loves me. I want to meet him and talk to him. And not to be disturbed. I made a stupid mistake, too. I should have just left after Natashka and I congratulated you, and we stayed in the restaurant hall, at Andrei's invitation. Worst of all, I went dancing. I should have been home by now. Will you help me? Nastia, I invited Victor to a birthday party and told him you'd be there. And also that you needed to talk. Did he agree? Not right away, but I asked him what he was afraid of. And what did he say? He said he's not a coward and he's willing to meet with you. How do you envision it? You'll have a private table, off to the side. You can talk. But I can't be away for too long. It's up to you and him. Nastia was nervous before her meeting with Victor. She wanted this meeting and was looking forward to it, but she didn't know what he would tell her. After he left the detention center and did not return home, she called her brother. Tot brought up his assistants, but they couldn't find Victor. His workplace said that he had left and no one knew where he was. And then there was an article in the local newspaper about a local oligarch being jailed for 15 days. This information was a surprise to her. She thought Victor was an ordinary economist working in a successful firm. And he had never dissuaded her from it. He had a pass policy at work, and you had to call to get in. Then he would go downstairs and personally escort her to his office. She had been to his office several times. It was a small, neat office where he sat alone. There was a computer and papers on a large desk. The office of the company manager was on the same floor. Finally, she saw Victor enter the banquet hall. He took the shortcut to Paul, gift in hand. He congratulated him. It was obvious that he didn't notice Nastia sitting aside, who had already congratulated her brother. As they talked, Pavel nodded his head, indicating to Victor where to go. He turned and met Nastia's gaze. Pashka explained. Nastia's already sitting there, nervous. And you're almost late. No, I'm not. I got here just in time. So, are you going to talk to Nastia? Or are you afraid? I will. In the meantime, what's going on with the progress of the documentation on the plant I bought? Your people have signed off on the project. So you bought it. I've been wondering. I could understand it, but your manager's in the hospital. I didn't authorize him to make that deal. I bought the plant, not him. Tell me, do you believe it will bring you profit? Pasha, I'm an economist, and I've calculated everything long ago. So you get yours moving. I needed this yesterday. You got a lot of nerve. Yesterday you signed a sales contract, and today you're already going to make a profit. Okay, go to Nastia. I'll solve your problem tomorrow. He's on the job. Victor ended the conversation. He turned and went to the table where Nastia was sitting. I noted for myself that the table was a little to the side and set for two. There's champagne on the table, cognac. At that time a text came in, he read it on the fly. The show masks pulled up, obviously there was going to be a takeover. Victor turned around, walked over to Pasha and whispered. The masks are here. Keep in mind. Don't worry about me. After that, Victor walked quickly to Nastia's table, sat down on a free chair and said. Good evening. Hello, Vitya. It took you a long time to reach me. How are you doing? Is that why you called me? I'm sorry, I want to talk to you about the other day. I'm listening. In the meantime, Victor noticed that Pashka had disappeared. Several other people were missing. He leisurely pulled out his phone and deleted the text message he had received. Nastia waved her hand at the waiter and asked him to open the champagne. It was obvious that she was worried. The waiter poured champagne for her and asked Victor. Would you like champagne too? Or cognac? Victor, assuming that there was going to be an assault, replied. Thank you, I'll pour it myself when I've made up my mind. Victor was not mistaken. As soon as Nastia started to speak, the soldiers in Special Forces uniforms rushed into the hall and demanded. Everybody lie down. Don't move. Victor said to Nastia. Well, I'm not going to lie down on the floor. A senior SWAT officer approached him and asked. Why aren't you complying with the SWAT requirements? It's that I didn't get down on the floor. What is this, a hostage rescue? Or the capture of a particularly dangerous criminal? It's none of your business. Documents. They're in my room. I don't see the need to take my papers for dinner with my wife. Can you introduce yourself? No problem. I am Viktor Ivanovich, the owner of this restaurant and hotel. Now I live in my room, on the top floor. This is my wife, Anastasia Kirillovna. But from now on, all conversations will be through my lawyer. And where is he? A lawyer? Here he is. Meet Konstantin Fedorovich. The head of the operation looked around. Kostya approached them and asked. I only want one paper. Who authorized this operation and on the basis of what? The SWAT team left the banquet hall of the restaurant, but the fun was spoiled. The guests began to gradually leave the room. Victor called the waiter over and said. Dinner, please, for 3, in the room on the top floor. Attach this champagne and cognac. Vitya, I'm sorry, I still have to deal with the special forces. And I promised my wife I'd be home early. Okay, if anything happens, I'll call you. Kostya went to the exit. Victor said to Nastia. Let's go to my place. We have to talk somewhere. Nastia obediently stood up. They walked through the hotel lobby and took the elevator to the floor occupied by Victor. We made our way to the room. A few minutes later, the waiter came and delivered dinner to the room, as well as champagne and cognac. After he left, Victor poured cognac for himself and champagne for Nastia. After waiting a bit, Victor asked. What did you want to say? Why did we meet? I wanted to tell you what happened then, 3 years ago. And what happened? That day was Friday, and I had a shortened working day. Natashka and I left the office, at which time Pashka arrived and invited us to a restaurant for a short time, for his real birthday. Natashka and I agreed, but we agreed that it would be no more than an hour. His reasoning was that he wanted a family member among the guests. There's no other family. You know, it's just me and him. They sat in the banquet hall, had a few drinks, talked. Natasha and I were going home, but we had to go out through the main hall of the restaurant. I know now that there are 2 more exits. How long ago did you find out? That's when I found out. But first things first. When we were walking through the hall, we came across Andrei. He was sitting at a table with his friends. He was happy to see us. The time was about 8 o'clock. Despite our persistence, he sat us down at a table, then the music started playing, and Andrei dragged me to the dance floor. That's when you called. Natashka answered the call. After a short break, the band started playing a gypsy song. Natasha didn't have time to tell me that you had called. That's what she said later, when we were sorting things out. Andre asked me to dance again. I warned Natasha that after this dance we were leaving. When we were about to finish dancing, you showed up and put Andre down. In the commotion, one of Pasha's friends, who happened to be there, took me and Natasha out through the emergency exit and brought us our clothes from the check room. He said, "You guys, get out of here. You can't help Victor anymore. We're gonna try." Why didn't they help me? You were taken to the station quickly, and they just didn't have time. At least Andre didn't file a report on you. What did he even say to you? Nothing. I never saw Andre again. He didn't show up for work and was fired for absenteeism. His brother said he went to the hospital, got stronger and escaped from there. What happened to him? I don't know, I didn't specify that. I tried to meet you myself when you were serving 15 days, but, unfortunately, you refused to meet with me, did not even accept the handover I brought you. Nor did you read my letter. It was returned unopened. I was fine, Kostya provided everything I needed. But Kostya didn't tell us where you were. We thought you were in town. Pashka never thought you'd start a new case somewhere else. Did you ask him to track me down? Yeah, who else could I turn to? All this time, I've been waiting for a divorce summons. Do you work there, too? Sure. And you live in our cottage? You didn't evict me. And we built the cottage when we were married. Nastia's phone rang. After listening to what she was told, she replied, "I got it. I'm on my way, I'll be there in 20 minutes. She turned off the phone and told Victor, "I've told you everything I wanted to tell you. Now you have to decide what to do next. What's your hurry?" "I have to go home." "What, is there a man waiting?" "You could say that. But you can come with me and meet him. You think it's convenient?" "I think it's convenient." "All right, I'll go." Victor called Kostya and asked, "You wouldn't happen to have a car on duty here, would you?" "I knew it, go outside, the car will come to the main entrance." Victor asked Nastia, "Should I bring cognac with me? He doesn't drink." They got dressed, went downstairs, and went outside. The snow was falling quietly. A car was parked near the main entrance. They got in and drove off. 20 minutes later they arrived at their cottage. The lights were on. The driver stayed waiting, and Victor and Nastia went inside the house. They were met by a young woman who said, "Nastia, I'm sorry, of course, but he won't go to bed without his mother." Stubborn beyond belief. "Of course, Katya, you can go. It's late. Explain to me what's going on." "Nothing. My son won't go to bed without me." "Your son? Who's the father? Who do you think? How old is he?" 2 years and almost 3 months. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't Pashka say anything?" "I asked Pashka not to tell you anything." "Young lady, how far is it to walk?" "It's a long way. There's a car parked there. Tell the driver that Viktor Ivanovich gave the command to take you home, and after that, have him return to the garage." "Vitya, are you staying here?" "Yes, there's a guest room here." They went up to the second floor and entered the children's room, which had been converted from his office. There on the bed, in his pajamas, sat a boy. He shouted excitedly, "Mom, you came. Aunt Katya said you'd be late. As you can see, I'm back, so come on, go to bed." "Are we going to Uncle Pasha's tomorrow?" "Why?" "It's his birthday." "It's his birthday today. And he'll come to us tomorrow." "Who's the uncle?" "I don't know yet. I'll tell you in the morning. Go to sleep." Nastia turned on the nightlight, kissed her son, and with Victor, left the bedroom. They went downstairs. Nastia put an appetizer and 2 brandy glasses on the table. She said, "Vitya, I know I haven't told you everything. I'm afraid I haven't told you the most important thing." "Well, what didn't you say?" "I've been thinking about what happened. I'm guilty before you, I unwittingly deceived you. I could have left the restaurant, all I had to do was tell my brother, and Andrei's whole group would have been taken out. But I arrogantly thought I could handle the situation. Well, I was. But you showed up first. And I shouldn't have gone to the restaurant, much less danced with Andrei. Besides, you warned me about him. Shall we have a drink?" "Let's do it." Victor asked. "You never told me our son's name." "I'm sorry, there were so many things going on today, the restaurant, meeting you, meeting the special forces. And I named my son Victor. So he's Viktor Viktorovich now. Now decide what you're going to do, whether you want to live with us or without us. And I'm guilty before you, and I'm asking you to give our family another chance." Victor went to sleep in the guest room. Nastia went up to the bedroom on the 2nd floor. At night the doorbell rang, Victor opened it. A drunk Pavel stood on the doorstep. "Hi. I figured you'd be here. Let's have a drink. I can see you've had a drink. It's my birthday. I saw the SWAT team coming to congratulate me. I took care of it. Someone rattled the police about the fact that I was going to have some wanted men at my birthday party. Truth be told, I questioned what kind of team was that, face to the floor. And what they said. They said sorry, it just happened. And a lot of people were detained. No one was detained. Apologized to the Tomahawk for some reason and left. It's okay. Tell me, did you see your son?" "About 3 minutes. They were putting him to bed." "Nastia's strict. Why didn't you tell me?" "I said that these are not my secrets." Nastia came into the kitchen, saw her brother and asked, "Why can't you sleep?" "Nastia, don't swear. I was passing by, I thought I'd drop by." "At 2 in the morning? Passing by? You live 5 kilometers away from me." "Well, he wanted to take a little walk. Anyway, 5 kilometers is no detour for a rabid dog. Let's have a drink and I'll sleep in the guest room. That's where Victor sleeps. But he can go up to the bedroom on the 2nd floor." "What makes you think we can sleep in the same bed?" "Because Victor's a real man." In the end, Victor weighed everything, and to Nastia's joy, returned to her. Victor's son was the happiest of all, proudly telling everyone that he and his father had the same name. Though he didn't understand the meaning of everything that was happening. Nastia knew that the name Victor translates from Latin as Vic. Tor. But knowing her husband's character, she remembered that he was long suffering over any offenses and never forgot them. So she never gave a reason for jealousy again, as she valued her family. Pavel ran his office, getting involved in various disputes and solving controversial issues. But he did his work under the supervision of an experienced lawyer, whom he had hired on Victor's advice.